So, my name is Elizabeth. I'm here presenting to you from Evaluation and Learning Consulting. It is nice to see all of you on this Friday. Just a really quick note about me, who I am. Hold on just one second. Here we go. So I'm an applied research professional. That's how I describe evaluation, monitoring evaluation, especially for those who are not familiar with it. It's applied research. And what we do is offer services mainly to nonprofits, to government entities, and to the foundation sector. I've been doing the work for over 15 years now. It's been quite a journey for me. And then just in terms of the different areas in which I've worked, I was an 8th grade teacher. That's where I began teaching 8th graders. And I always say, if I can teach 8th graders, I can teach anybody. And it is held true to this day. I have my MPH and my MSW, so not only education, but my passions are in health and in social work, social services. I've worked in internal evaluation at Good Shepherd Services. If anybody's from New York City area, you might be familiar. They do work with children, youth, and families. I teach quantitative methods at New York University, and I am a facilitator here at Evaluation and Learning Consulting, and those are the folks who are sharing this webinar with you today. So in terms of just general housekeeping, please keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking. I do love opening up the gates and just allowing people to speak freely. So I will have the moments like that throughout the webinar. Please feel free to use the chat box for any questions and comments. I will stop periodically. I have 3 sections of what I want to go through with you. And after each section, I'm going to check the chat box for any questions that you do have for me. And then at the very end, I'll leave space for questions as well. And then I think most of you have your cameras off, but if you decide, or you do have it on, love to see your face. But if you need to step away for any reason, just make sure you turn it off for your own privacy. This webinar is being recorded. And as I said, I will be sharing it with you after this webinar, as well as with folks who were not able to attend. So in terms of today, I have a lofty agenda for all of you that kind of hits on a little bit from 3 different categories. The first one is that I want to share with you my favorite participatory method. And this is a method that you can apply for lots of different things, but specifically what I want to share with you today is how I use it for identifying key metrics. So in the context, let me back up just 1 minute. The context of all of this is recognizing the fact that I see we have people here from around the world, but all of us seem to do work in some sort of either government, nonprofit, or foundation space. And so all of us have had our work and the services that we offer impacted by COVID. And so with that idea, I recognize the fact that in the last couple of months, we have needed data, immediate data, yesterday. And we need that information in order to make decisions. It's really helpful also to have that information to make predictions about where we're headed in terms of the services that we need to be providing in the next couple of months to years. And so with that shift, we've needed this feedback loop very quickly. And so while this process I have used in good times, non-COVID times, I think it's especially helpful during this time, again, for this rapid feedback loop. So with that being said, this first piece that I want to share with you is how my favorite tool for identifying those metrics. So what is it that we even need to be measuring? And what I have found is that if we don't use a participatory method to do it, we run into the challenge of perhaps not choosing correctly, not being thorough in our scope. So yes, this participatory method for identifying key metrics. Once we've identified those metrics, I want to show you the tool that I use for data collection. There are lots of tools out there. What I gravitate towards are Google Forms and Microsoft Forms. And I'll explain my rationale for that when we get there, but that's the data collection piece. And then I think of this always as a cycle. So once we've got the data collection, then we need to analyze it and report upon it. So what do I use for that? I gravitate towards Google's Data Studio and or Microsoft Power BI. And I use that for the analysis and reporting. And again, I'll explain why I do what I do and in what instances this is the most helpful. And as I've said, I've found it to be particularly helpful during these COVID times, just so that I can get information quickly and out to the appropriate parties. So very quickly, I want to just run a poll with those 3 things in mind. I want to see from you, what is it that brought you here? So we have identifying metrics, we have data collection tools, and tools for reporting. So this will help me to kind of cater what I spend my time on based on what your interest is. So I'll give you a moment. It's like watching the races, seeing these results come in. All right, I think I've got most everybody. So let me share the results with you. Okay, so it looks to me like data collection tools is the most interesting to all of you. So I'll make sure to spend the most time there diving into that and make sure I take time for questions there too, followed by reporting, followed by identifying metrics. So thank you for that. That's really helpful information. And that means I will not linger too long on this first part, but I do want to make sure I cover it for those of you who are interested. And so just a really quick note for those of you who are not terribly familiar with evaluation, I just want to lay the groundwork so that we're all on the same page when we move forward with the rest of this webinar. So there are lots of different ways of categorizing the types. I categorize them into 4 buckets. So there's the formative evaluation, and this is what we do before we even decide that we want to run a program, so that we can identify what elements would most likely be the most helpful, what will be understood, what will be accepted. So that's the formative evaluation. Then there's the process evaluation, and that's what happens as the program is running to make sure that it is running with integrity. And what I mean by that is that it's offering the services that you intended to provide. You're offering them to the level to which you intended, and that you're reaching the audience that you intended to reach. So that's the beginning stages. Now we've got the middle, and then the last 2 kind of go hand in hand. You could lump them together. And this is looking at the impact. So the outcome and the impact. What impact are you having on your participants at the end of the day once they've been engaged in your program for a while? And so with all of that in mind, everything that I'm going to go through with you today applies and you can use in any of these types of evaluation. What I'm going to focus on with you though is process. So this is more the monitoring part of monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And so this is ways of making sure that we know what we're offering, how we're offering it, to whom we're offering it, and so on. Just put that out there so we're all speaking the same language. All right, so for part 1, identifying key metrics. The very first step is to just make sure you know what it is that you're asking. What is it that you need to know or want to know? And we always say that any type of data collection should begin with this key question. So some examples, if we're talking about a process evaluation, if we're talking about monitoring and setting up a monitoring system, one question could be simply, what services are we providing and how often are we providing them? It could be, which services are being accessed? You know that that's a very different question. And to what degree are they being accessed? And then another question could be, are we reaching our intended population? So all of these could be fused together in some way too. These are just examples to get you thinking about what it could look like, what these evaluations could look like. So the first step is just identifying that, making sure everybody is completely clear on what it is that you want to know. Next is, who is needed to help you answer that question? And again, as I said earlier, I am a huge proponent of participatory processes early on so that it's not a forced participatory process later. And what I mean by that is that if you are sure to include people as much as possible earlier in the planning phases, and if you are sure to include people who have a wide range of backgrounds and expertise, different perspectives on what you're offering, then that provides you the opportunity to get many different voices, many different perspectives, and make sure that you have a well-rounded solution so that there's less work to do later in the remediation phase. So with that being said, obvious participants that you would want to include would be from as many stakeholder groups as possible. Of course, those who are offering the services, we want in the room to ask them about the services that are being offered, but there are so many other people who could be included. So if you have people who do monitoring and evaluation specifically for this program or this cluster of programs, you'd want them in the room. If you have people working in the grant side who help to secure the grant or who are doing funder reporting, those folks should be in the room. Other stakeholders include participants. As much as possible, include them in the process. Other community stakeholders who are intended to be reached or voices in this process, but not necessarily participants, would also be a really good group of people to include. So there are some of the examples of what I just went through. So with that being said, when it comes to the invitation, we've got all of them invited into this one common space, and the request is for them to give you an hour to an hour and a half. It does not take longer than that. So once you've got them all in the space, the supplies that you need would be Post-its, Sharpies, and that's enough for everybody in the room, a small stack of Post-its and one Sharpie, as well as poster paper and markers, and those are for you and or the folks who are facilitating. And then, of course, we are in times of COVID, so we've found ways of doing this online, and I have done this online, and I have found it to be very successful. The tool that I use for any of these Post-it type activities is called Google Jamboard, and I'll show you how to get there, how to find it, but it's accessible to anybody who has a Gmail account. And I will send out the slides after this as well, and you can see here I have a link that's a really quick introduction to how you use it. I find it to be extremely user-friendly. It's very easy to pick up, and it's a nice platform that essentially creates a space that multiple people can join at the same time, and it has a simulation of a desk and then Post-its, and people can create Post-its and put them on that common shared space and then move them around and annotate and have conversations about what they're looking at. So that would be the online alternative. And Zoom, I think, is probably the best tool because you'll want these breakout rooms, which I'll explain to you why in just a moment. So there's the main activity, and that main activity is broken into 3 different parts. And it's a brainstorming session that we're inviting people to join us in. This particular model comes from design thinking, human-centered design, and specifically IDEO. They have this human-centered design toolkit. It's this field guide. I have a link here as well. It is a free tool that has a large number of different ways of engaging people in participatory processes that help you to elicit the information that you need and make the decisions that you need to make as a group. So from there are these 3 stages. The first one is just an ideation stage. And this is where you hand, if you're in person, everybody a stack of Post-its as well as a Sharpie. And you set a timer for 5 minutes and you ask them to think upon the question that you've provided them. So a question could be, if we're talking about the evaluation question of what services are we offering and to what degree, my question might be, what services are we providing right now? And I would set the timer for 5 minutes, give them their stack of Post-its, and just let them think on their own first. And so the prompt there is to make sure that every idea is on a single Post-it. So each idea and to try and cover the space in front of them as much as possible. So after that 5 minutes, they've got as many of their own individual ideas as they can down. Then we move into the discussion stage. And so I'll set the timer for another 5 minutes and I'll break them into groups. And in those small groups, I ask them to share with each other the things that they wrote down on their Post-its. And their challenge here in these smaller groups is twofold. The first one is to look for any repeating ideas. And so I have them physically stack the Post-its on top of each other if they're the same idea. And then I have them look for commonalities and themes or generalities that could be made. And then I just have them group their Post-its into those different buckets. So now we're starting to do, you know, some qualitative analysis here, right? For those of you who are fellow researchers, but for those of you who are not, we're just looking for themes and trends and bigger ideas. So then we move into step 3, which is the group decision phase. And here we have a whole group discussion. And again, we're looking for these patterns or trends. And this time it's the facilitator who is doing that. So if I'm in person and I'm doing this, what I would do is ask the whole room, okay, well, what's one idea that all of you shared? In one group, and I'll grab their Post-its, and then I'll ask the rest of the group, did anybody else have this idea? And I'll collect the Post-its from every person who did. I'll stick them on top of each other and I'll put them up on the board. And from there, we'll keep going. And again, we're looking for ideas and commonalities. What I love about this physical process of collecting those Post-its is that there's some voting power in there. I can see what the most popular thoughts and ideas are. And so in this time-constrained period, I can see what's rising to the surface is the most important for the people in the room. And again, this harkens back to why it's so important to do a participatory process, because if you don't have all of the important stakeholders in the room, the most important ideas are only going to reflect those who are in the space at that time. So in terms of doing this online, what I would do during stage 1 is I have them jot down ideas on a piece of paper near them or on Word on their computer. During step 2, the reason I recommend Zoom is because they have a breakout rooms ability where I can randomly assign people into groups of 4 to go into their own mini room. And they would discuss, and that's when I would have them go to Google Jamboard and start to share their ideas and create Post-its and make these commonalities. And then for the decision phase, I would bring everybody back together. I would have a representative share their boards with me. And meanwhile, I'm going to take notes and I'll asterisk ideas as I start hearing them again. And again, try and get that concept of what the really popular ideas that are rising to the surface are. So that's that process. And I'm just going to pause for a second to see if there are any questions about that. And then I'll move on to data collection. Good. I see Carrie just mentioned, it's more of a comment, and she said she's interested in understanding adaptations, considerations for crisis settings along all 3 of these topics. Yeah, so Carrie, one of the most prominent ones that's coming to my mind is about the need for online solutions. And so there's that right there for you. The other one is making sure that we're doing things that are time condensed, because when we're in a crisis situation, people have a lot to do and they need to do that yesterday too. So making sure that you're making it really relevant for people and that you're making it as short as possible. We want to make sure that we get the information that we need, but we're not wasting anybody's time. That's really important. I see Natalie, and I'll keep that in mind too as I keep going. Okay, so I see Karen. She said, do you have visuals of the Jamboard for this exercise? Yes, and Karen, I can show that. I can show that. Anybody else who wants to see it, let me know. And I can either show it now or I could show it at the end, depending on people's interest level. Okay, Natalie, she says, it's a lot like ICA's Associates Consensus Workshop Method. Great, you're welcome. I'm glad it's ringing a bell. It's a really popular model, Natalie. In terms of the process is so nimble and flexible that you can use it for so many things. I've shared it with people and they've said, oh, I could use it for this, I could use it for that. It's such a great way of having individuals have their own voice, right? There's this concept of the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. And when we hold a meeting and we just ask a question to everybody, that person's voice tends to be the one that rises to the surface and everybody just says yes, and we keep moving along with our day, right? Because it's the easiest, it's our default, it's the hierarchy that we work in. And so a process like this, which is what I appreciate so much, is it gives individuals an opportunity to think on their own first. And then we start moving into smaller groups and then the large group. And it gives this process of thinking through your thoughts, really processing in safe groups before we move it into a bigger group. Let's see who else. In addition to Jamboard, Yuki is saying she really likes a tool called Padlet. Great, thank you, Yuki. I actually haven't heard of Padlet, but there are so many others. There's Stormboard, which is another one that I've used that I really like. Somebody just told me about a new one called Mural, which I think is very similar. So there's so many free tools out there. Some of them are, limited in their scopes so that you pay for the upgraded version. And it's really just what is interesting to you. So thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I see lots of people who would like to see Jamboard. So let me show that to you. And look, Madison has used Padlet as well. Great. Okay, so here's why I choose Jamboard as I navigate to Jamboard. Let me just hide my meeting controls so I can see my menu. The reason that I wound up ultimately choosing to use Jamboard and stick with Jamboard, the first one is that in order to use it, nobody else besides me needs to sign into Google. So there is no sign-in process. There's no data collection. It is just simply you click the link and everybody is in. So for instance, I was using Stormboard to begin with, but they needed to register with Stormboard. So this just made it easy, especially when you're trying to herd lots of different people into a space, especially when we're talking about technology and people's different comfort levels with it. You just want the easiest solution possible. So that's what I found this to be. Just to show you how to get there, it's in your, for those of you who are familiar with Google, it's here in the main menu. So these are the most common apps that we just click on. And honestly, I hadn't really scrolled until somebody told me about Jamboards, and I found it down here. It's right here. So if you were to click on that, it would take you to the really classic Google landing page for a Google app. Oh, I didn't create any boards on this account yet. That is, you know what? Let me just show you. I have some demo ones on my personal account. I haven't done it on this business account. Hold on one moment. And I can show you. Let me reshare my screen. This one. Okay, so you should be able to see my drive here. Hopefully, yep, it's loading. All right, so I will once again click into Jamboard. This looks more familiar. So you can see I've used it quite a bit, and I've also just created a demo, like a sandbox for people to play around. So we'll click into that one so you can see some of the doodles people have made and the capability that it has. But they're all housed here. And then just to dive a little bit deeper, Jamboard has the potential for 20 different pages. So depending on what you use it for, use those pages. But in particular, what I use this for when I'm talking about this 3-stage process, when we're breaking folks up into their breakout rooms, there's a pop-up window when you're going into your breakout room that tells you what your room number is. And so I tell folks to remember that room number, and I ask them, I think.
Excuse me, Elizabeth? I'm so sorry. We can only see the presenter view.
How's that?
A lot better, thank you.
Good, thank you. I saw my chat box going off and I had a feeling there was something wrong with my sharing. Okay, so yes, I was sharing that there are these 20 different pages that are possible. When they go into breakout rooms, they're told what their breakout room number is. And so I tell them to go to that corresponding page. So if they're in breakout room number 1, go to page 1. If you're in breakout room 6, go to page 6. And that's where your team meets. So the platform itself is really flexible, where the main tools are over here on the left-hand side. To create a post-it, you just click on that post-it icon. You would just type in, here's my post-it. You can change colors. So sometimes I'll have people choose their different color according to themselves, so we know whose post-its are whose. You just click save. That inserts the post-it on the background, and then you can say as many as you'd like and then hit cancel. So once you're in here, you can move these around. You can make them larger and smaller. You can edit them as needed up here in the corner. And like I said, if I were to send this link to you, if I were to share this with you, you would be able to join me in here and do exactly what I'm doing at the same time as me. And then just some other like fun things. You can add images. You can annotate. So there's a marker pen option. So you can circle and write on it. So when people are looking for themes, they might circle them or group them and then annotate from there. You can change the background to make it look a certain way. It's really pretty simple. It's just this canvas. I know some others provide really large surfaces that you can zoom around in. And again, it really just depends on what are you trying to do and who is your audience, and then what's the best tool for you. And it's really about just knowing all the things that are out there so that you're making sure that you're using the most appropriate thing for folks. I see Natalie's asking, can you save this in Google Drive for everyone to access? Yes. Natalie, are you asking me, can I share this link with you to the sandbox? Or are you saying just in general, can that be shared? In general, yeah, it can be shared. And it just stays there for as long as you'd like. So we use this to take notes in meetings and share screens during meetings. We've used it for so many different things. And it's as simple as sharing the link here. So here, get link, anyone on the internet with this link can edit it. That is what I want. I want everybody to be able to come in here and edit it. So then you just copy this link. And you know what, I can even share it with all of you. So you could see if you want to play around in the sandbox. Yes, for focus groups, 100%. Rita, I love that you bring that up, because I have definitely used this when I am facilitating any type of meeting to be really transparent about my note taking. So if I was in front of folks doing any sort of note taking on what they're saying, I would normally do it on a piece of poster paper. But without that ability, you could do it on a Word document. But I especially like it here because you can move things around. And I could have people in here helping me to take notes at the same time, which is nice. To use this for the decide part of the workshop too. Yes, that's a good question, Natalie. So what I do is I have the different groups in here in their own page, on their own in the middle phase. And then when we get to decide, I have folks share their screen and they just talk us through what their different categories are. And I'm in a different page, a blank page in this document. And I'm taking notes then. And then once everybody's done, I will reshare my screen and I'll show them that last page in the Google Jamboard where I took notes on everything that they said. And then we go from there. So yes, I definitely use it. You're welcome. I see many of you in there now. All right, so that's that. If there are no other questions, I want to make sure I get to the other parts of this, because I know this was the least, got the least votes for what people are interested in, but once you get started, it is just so compelling. All right, so let me go back to my PowerPoint. Here we are. Okay, so let me keep going. And then again, if we have time at the end, I will open it up for more questions. So feel free to ask more questions at the end. All right, so when it comes to data collection, this was what most people in the room were interested in. So let's talk about it. Just really quickly, tell me in the chat box, do you use Google, Microsoft, both, or neither in the office? I see both, Google, both. Great. That's actually really helpful to be able to go between the two. Both, Google mostly. I see quite a bit of Microsoft. Kobo, Microsoft, Google, Microsoft. Okay, great. All right, it looks like a split. And then I'll speak to all parties. For those of you who use both, you're obviously deciding like what type of information you're using. You're customizing it to the platform that you use. For everybody else, what I will say, what I love about I'm going to talk about Google, and I'll show you Google Forms. But what I love about it is that it is very much the same in Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Forms. It has the same interface. It is, for all intents and purposes, very, very much the same program. But why I choose Google, it's an easy way to collect information. It's online. It is free. It is free, and that is what I love the most about it. Unless you have Microsoft 365 online, Microsoft does not have this feature, and I should have said that from the beginning. But if you have 365 online, there is an online version. If you were to log into your apps, the online suite via your browser, you can find Microsoft Forms in there. But obviously you pay for Microsoft. I love that it's collaborative. Both of them are extremely collaborative. Both of them are extremely user-friendly, and both of them have quite a lot of features. But there are some drawbacks, and of course I want to be transparent about those, like why I might not choose to use Forms is, one, you need a Google account to create it. So if you don't feel like signing up for a Google account, that wouldn't work for you. What for sure I wind up not using it for is if I need a lot of features, or I want it to look really, really, really professional. So down here, the templates and the design options are pretty limited. So if I want it to look a certain way, especially if it's for like an external audience, I might go towards SurveyMonkey. But if I need something that's just basic, easy, going with the theme of today, we just need something to go out there because I need the information back, then I would recommend Google Forms, because it's, well, there are a number of reasons, but some of them is that it's in the Google Suite, it is online, it is free, it is collaborative. So just really quickly, I want to show you, hold on, let me hide this, show you my Google Forms as well. So we looked at my G Suite menu, and we saw the Jamboards down here, and just to the left of it is Forms. So you would just click on that, and it would take you to Google Forms if you've never used it before. And again, it's the same landing page where we've got all of the ones that we've already created here, and we've got a couple templates. You can see they're there. I don't love the colors even, and you really don't have too much control over what it looks like, but it works. You'll find something that works. Oh, another thing that I should say is that for both version of Forms, when you share the link, it's mobile friendly. So if you were to share the link with folks and text message it to them, for instance, or they were just to open it on their phone, they could fill out the form very easily without a lot of scrolling and zooming in. So here's an example of a form. It's just a demo form. And you can see we have things broken into sections. One of the things that I just want to call your attention to is, if you're familiar with creating forms in any platform, and or surveys for that matter, and you've created surveys that have conditional logic to them. So if you answer A, please jump to question 7, but if you answer B, you can go all the way down to question 20. You can replicate that in Google Forms. It's a little bit easier, I think, in other platforms, including Microsoft, where you can branch specific questions. For Google Forms, you need to branch sections, which is why you see these sections. So each section is its own page, and depending on the way that somebody answers, you can have them jump sections so they're not going through in order. Once you create your section, you create your questions here, and I just want to show you really quickly what that looks like. You just type in the answer, your options are here. You can choose the different types. So there's qualitative data that you can collect with short answers and paragraphs. You can collect multiple choice checkboxes, drop downs, file upload, which I think is supremely helpful. Once they upload the file, it goes right into your drive. You can create a folder that it will go right into. I've used that many times. Linear scale is just your Likert scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree. You have date, time, checkbox grids. There's lots of different options here. And that's essentially it. You create your questions. You can move them around like this. You can make them required or not required. That's essentially it. When you go to send, that's where you find the link that you can send out to folks. And then in particular, what I want to show you is just the responses form or the page. So here is where all the questions are. This is where we create it, just to show you really quickly what it looks like for the user. So this was section 1. You can see that there are 5 sections, so they're on page 1 of 5. It gives them that little progress marker. You can take that away if you'd rather. And then you can see my required questions are asterisked. So when it comes to, once they hit send, their responses will be collected as well. And this is where the magic starts happening. And this is really why I choose to use Google Forms. So it summarizes it here once they start coming in, the way that SurveyMonkey or any other platform would do, with pie charts and bar charts, to just share a general gist of what the responses are looking like. It also collects all of that information in a spreadsheet form. So by clicking on this, it will take you to a new spreadsheet contained in your drive as well. And as the form is being submitted, it creates a brand new row for each of them. This is a live document, so you can add columns with notes and whatnot, but as people continue to add forms in, submit their forms with their responses, it will continue to add rows into the document. So I just love that alone. So you're not downloading a static document ever. You can send people who want the raw data the link to this file, this Excel document, and they can pull that data for themselves at any time, or do a quick analysis if they wanted to in spreadsheets online with the data that's provided. So that I love. I think that's really powerful. From there is what I really, really love, which is that a dashboard, the Dashboard Data Studio, can pull from, again, this spreadsheet right here. So I'll show you when we get to the dashboard in just a moment that you can find that document in your drive, you can connect the data, and so now we've got this seamless loop between once I send that form to folks and that dashboard and that report and the folks who have the link to that report. So now no longer am I in here downloading information every week and making sure that it's put into the reporting format that I normally do before I send them out, the PDF or the Word document or whatever it might be. Now I have got this seamless line of communication between the person who's filling out the form and the person who's viewing the visualization, which is just a dream. You can think of the power of that kind of communication and what that frees up your analysts to be working on instead. All right, so I'm going to pause here. That is what I want to share with you in terms of forms. So I just want to take 1 or 2 questions and then make sure I get to the visualization piece for you. Let's see. Ooh, Lisa, you are right. Yes. So Lisa shared a point of correction. She said that you can upload color palettes, and you're right. I have not explored that nearly enough, but if you want to use your branded colors, you can upload that into Forms. And yes, you can upload the image to the top and change that. The rest of the form will, oh, interesting. I did not know that, Lisa. She's saying that if you upload an image, the form will pull from those colors. Very cool. Thank you for that. And who else? M is saying, how do you navigate data privacy concerns with G Suite? That's such a huge thing. And that's kind of why I asked what people work in. If you're already working in Google, keep working in Google. What I would say is to make sure that you de-identify the information. So if you have participant names, don't ask for them, right? This is not the right platform for participant names. And the fear is just the security of the information. It's not behind your company's firewall. And so it is relatively unprotected from hackers. So yes, I do restrict the information that I collect. I mean, if you want to go deeper, there is something called the mosaic effect where you can piece together people's information. So if a hacker really wanted your participants' information, you would want to be careful about what you're asking for when it's in the Google form. platform. This is why I do recommend, if you're in Microsoft, to stay in Microsoft. If you already have 365 online, use their Forms version and their Power BI, which is the equivalent of Data Studio. So stick with that if you have access to that. If people aren't using it right now, that's okay. You can get them accustomed to it. I would stay away from Google if possible. But with that being said, at least just go to your IT person if you haven't already. If you're already in Google, again, you're doing it. But I would confer with your IT representative to just make sure what their recommendations are around using it or not using it. It really just depends on your company. Okay, and then Lisa's saying G-Forms has a couple of options. All recipients can see all of the responses. Yep. So once the person submits the response, everybody can see the responses. So if you don't want to create that live dashboard, you can share. You don't have much choice around the customization, but yes, they can see the information right away or know that the owner the responses, and it's stored in your Google space. Some larger organizations have Google for corporate servers, yes, and that would make that protected once again. Thank you. Okay, so that is Forms. So before dashboarding, I used to create a dashboard in Excel. So I would go to this spreadsheet where all of the data is being collected. I'd insert a tab and I'd create my visualizations that would live update as information was fed into it. But that does not need to be the way that it is anymore. So sorry, my phone is ringing. So what I want to share with you is this reporting tool. I'm going to skip through because I do see that we don't have too much time. Thank you. And just make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what a dashboard is. So a lot of times people will use a dashboard. We use it very freely to name a lot of different things. What I'm referring to when I call a dashboard is that it's a real-time tool and it provides your reader information to make effective decisions in that moment. It is directly connected to one or more data sources, so you can pull from multiple and create visualizations that blend your data. And that information is shared via visualizations. So that's what I'm referring to. And then when it comes to Data Studio and its ability to create visualizations and dashboards, one of the benefits that I find is that it is extremely similar to both Tableau and Power BI. I'm familiar with both, and I have found that I can move between the systems pretty seamlessly. The interface looks very, very similar. So if you learn on one, you can move to the others pretty quickly and easily. It once again is free, which is not the case for Tableau or Power BI. In fact, Power BI is an additional cost on top of your standard Microsoft suite. So that's something to keep in mind as you're looking to create dashboards. And it was unfortunate they let you go into Power BI for free and you can create your own dashboards, but once you want to share them, you need to start paying for it. So it's a great little sales funnel, but I did not appreciate that as somebody who really wanted to share my visualization. So what I really like about Data Studio is just that it's free, 100% free. I find it to be easy to learn. So there is a bit of a learning curve, but once you're over that hump, it plateaus and you can create some really amazing professional looking dashboards. And then you can dig deeper, just like any platform, but the basics are pretty easy to learn. It's very easy to share. It's as easy as clicking the share button. It's collaborative, just like any other Google platform. And it can draw from many different types of data sources. So I showed you, or I told you that it can pull from Google Sheets, but it can pull from pretty much any data set that you have where you can get a URL. So anything that's cloud-based. So Salesforce, for instance, you could grab that URL for the server, and once you connect it, it can have that auto update and live feed. Same thing, I've used SQL servers. I've been able to pull data from those as well. Or another platform that we've used is Open Data. So if you get that link, it can tie to Open Data sources. So there are a couple of drawbacks. Again, you need a Google account in order to use it. It does not have as many features as Tableau or Power BI. So sometimes I call it my training wheels for that. You can learn on Data Studio for free. And then when you need more features, you can explore what Tableau and Power BI have to offer. It can raise security issues. So this is where I usually talk about that issue with Google and how it is open source. Or just open if you're using the free account, if you're not using a corporate version. Okay, so let me quickly show you what this looks like in real life. So the Data Studio is not accessible on this menu. You just need to type in datastudio.google.com. And that will take you. Everyone has access to it. It's just not in that menu at the present moment. So this is what the landing page looks like, just like any other. It does have a couple of different templates that you could use as you're starting out if you want to see what's possible. And then here you can see the start of the different things that I've created, the different dashboards I've created. So let me just show you. So this is a rather large data set, so I preloaded it for you, just so that we're not waiting for it to think. But this is what could be shared. So in terms of sharing your dashboards, you can share a link that would take them exactly to this page, or a page that looks like this. You can also embed it into a website. So you can get an HTML code and then put that into, say, your organization's website if you wanted to share and have that, again, live feed that's updating constantly for the general public. From there, this is a dashboard just to give you a little background. It's on accident data for the months from June to December of 2019. It's for 4 states in the US, for Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York. And here you can see there are 5 different main visualization types. So we've got a pie chart, we've got a bar chart, or column chart, we've got the bar chart, stack bar chart here, and then we've got the line chart. And the last one here is just called a scorecard, and that's just the number, a number when you want to report a single number. What I love about Data Studio, one, as I said, it ties to any live data source that's live updating. So this too, live updates, I believe it polls every 15 minutes, and you can change that time to be something else if you'd like it to be. But also it is interactive. And so this provides the opportunity when we're creating static reports, we need to put ourselves in the brain of our reader and think of how we want to create this story for them and what questions they might have, and create individual visualizations for each of those pieces. Here is a totally different way of thinking about it. You still need to think of your story. You still need to consider the questions that they're going to have, but there's more flexibility for the reader to do some of their own exploration. And that really provides this interactive piece that I have found makes people even more interested in the data in front of them. So for example, if I wanted to look at the breakdown of accidents only in Massachusetts for these months, I can click on that slice, that Massachusetts slice. And as I said, it is a rather large data set, so it's going to take a moment to think about, and really what it's doing is going through that Excel document and finding all of the Massachusetts tagged lines and then pulling that information. But you'll see as it's done, as it finishes up its thinking, all of these visualizations will now respond to that, and they will filter for Massachusetts only. It is taking longer than normal, and I apologize for that, but that is what it does, I promise. The other thing that I wanted to show you, but I would really love for this to load, is that it has a mapping feature, which I think is particularly powerful as well. And I have that on page 2, and I'll show you in just a moment, but it did finish loading. So here you can see we've got Massachusetts. It's really clear that that's what we're using. Now our record count dropped to 5,000, and you can see the different breakdown of how it goes by month. You can select multiple options at the same time and just watch your visualizations change. This does call into attention, though, another limitation of just Google in general, but spreadsheets, whether it be Microsoft or Google, which is that it can only handle so much information at one time well. The other thing that I did want to show you, and this might take a moment to load, which is the mapping feature. And I'll show you in just a moment how easy it is to create this. But you can see right here, I have a Google map, and it shows all of the accidents by location. And then it also has a density option so that the circles can get larger as more accidents take place in that specific site. And this just makes it so transparent where these accidents are taking place. I see a couple of questions popping up for me. Do I recommend any specific, sorry, I see a couple questions, just one moment. So Sherelle, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but she's asking, can the dashboard pull from Google Sheets or Excel, especially sheets with multiple tabs? Yes, it's a really good question, Sherelle. It can pull from multiple sheets that are in within your drive. You just need to search for them and find them. And yes, you can specify which tab it is pulling from. You need to make it a different pull, like you need to make a different connection for each of those different tabs. But yes, it's possible. Also make sure you're careful with your naming convention. I learned that early on to make sure you name them really clearly if you're using tabs in the same document. I see Lisa saying this is a good group and interesting point. She really wants to see what everyone else knows too, but there's just no time. May I suggest learning from E. Deluzio on Twitter? Is that too long? It'll work, and it will definitely be unique, Lisa. And I agree. I want to see what everybody else has. I saw some other people mentioning other data collection tools that they use and brainstorming tools. So yes, I love that idea. Thank you, Lisa. So let's all agree to use hashtag learning from E. Deluzio. Let's share other platforms that we have, whether it be brainstorming and ways of collaborating in groups online in particular, but other platforms that we have, data collection as well as data reporting. I see that Michelle is saying, do you recommend any specific reason to learn Data Studio? Michelle, the main reason would be it's free. So if you already have a subscription to Tableau, if you already have 365 online, I would say use those. If you don't have either of those things, I think that Data Studio is a really great solution. The other thing that I just want to mention is that if you have 365 online, you cannot pull data from that spreadsheet. Oh no, actually you can, because you have the URL and pull it into Data Studio if you wanted to. I don't know why you would want to, but you could. Resources, not reason. Do you have any recommendation? Oh, sorry, resources to learn Data Studio. Yeah, and actually we have a self-guided class and we're teaching a live class next month. I'll share that information with you in just a moment. I see we're running out of time. Zoho is a better option. About 80% of the features are free and the dashboard has a lot more options. That's great to know. Thank you, Payal. So just to really quickly show you the editing, like behind the scenes, I'm going to come back to that. So I'm going to let that load itself just so I can show you what options are available here. But in terms of, what we went through today, we have identifying key metrics and this 3-phase participatory approach for doing that. We've got Google Forms and Microsoft Forms for collecting data, and then that direct connection to this interacting platform called Data Studio or Microsoft Power BI. I'm going to blow through those. What I do want to share with you, because we have 3 minutes and then just again have more conversation, is if you were interested in learning more about these participatory methods in using groups in order to make decisions and really create a data-driven organization, it's more of these conceptual ideas. We do teach a class called Creating the Data-Driven Mindset. We are teaching it live online, July 20th. We're also recording it, in the process of recording recording it, so you can pre-order it. When it comes to data collection as well as dashboards, we do have self-paced classes online. We are offering live classes in July. And in particular, as a thank you for coming here, for participating, we offer this discount code WED50, and that'll give you half off of all of these things. So anything that you're interested in, we leave it available for 24 hours from now. So in the next 24 hours, feel free to use it for 50% off. We also, just as a general plug, if you're interested in expanding your Excel skills, your R, Python, SQL, QGIS, we teach all of those classes. So sign up, because as we put those out, we can let you know that they're available. And then just in general, if you just wanted to have a conversation, ask me questions, whatever it may be, feel free to use that link here to my Calendly and just schedule a time for the two of us to talk. That is it for me. If you wanted to, I could stay an extra couple minutes and just show you the background. One thing that I really did want to show you, though, of Data Studio are all of the different options. So as I said, I showed you most of the visualization options, but there are other features as well. I just didn't do that justice with my demo dashboard. Gabriella, where can I sign up again for the courses? What I'm going to do is send you a link to these slides just after this. And when you go into the slides, you can click on those links and they will take you right to where you sign up. We offer the signups for the live classes on Eventbrite. You can also just find us on Eventbrite. And then we have our self-paced courses. They're available through something called Gumroad. And again, we have a link to that where you can find them. My Twitter handle, good question, and thank you for prompting me to my next slide, which is here. That's my contact information, elizabeth@aboutlearn.com. My Twitter is @LizDeluzio. What I will say is I'm going to send out the email to all of you through MailChimp, so make sure you keep an eye out for it. It'll come out in the next hour, I would say. It often gets filtered into people's junk mailboxes, and I want to make sure that you don't miss it. Lisa, there is absolutely nothing to apologize for. I so appreciate you and everything that you've done. And again, I'll look for all of you on Twitter with the hashtag learning from eDeluzio, and I will respond. I will share what I've got. I want to learn from you too. And obviously we'll follow each other so we can continue these conversations. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here, your questions, everything. So thank you. And I look forward to working with you all again soon. Good, thank you so much. Good, I'm glad it was helpful. Good to see all of you. See you soon.